Hello, welcome to the January 31st, 2023 Club Cubase livestream. My name is Greg Undo. I am the host of the livestream. I'm going to do a quick audio test while we begin. Just make sure everything's coming through, and then we'll start answering questions. Bear with me just for a moment. All right. So I'm monitoring computer sounds fine. So once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work as a product specialist primarily focusing on Steinberg products for Yamaha Corporation of America, which is the U.S. distributor of Steinberg. And I'll be the host of the live stream today. If you've not attended a live stream before, how it works is you could ask questions in the live chat or submit questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, if you realize that my ability to answer questions in real time will soon be eclipsed, I'll try my best throughout the live stream to catch up. But if we could try to avoid asking the same questions repeatedly, that would be appreciated. Just kind of slows down the whole process. And when asking questions, if you could specify which level of Cubase you're running, so whether it's Cubase LE, AI, Artist, Elements, or Pro, if it's version 10, 11, 12, and if it is which operating system you're running on, that would be helpful. We should have all of the topics covered in today's live stream pinned to the top of the comments field. And if you wanted to search for topics been covered in previous live streams, you could go to cubaseindex.com, and Jan from Stockholm has been kind enough to create that website. We have two people that serve as moderators that deserve special acknowledgement. So we have Agent K and Jazz Dude. They're not Steinberg employees. They just do it to make it a better environment. We also want to give a special thanks to Jazz Dude for his work on a Cubase Nation Discord, which is a wonderful resource for the Steinberg community. So make sure you check that out. And with that, I'm presenting from the United States. I'm based in Washington, D.C. area in Alexandria, Virginia. If you're watching this live, please feel free to introduce yourself. Even if you're watching it afterwards, you can introduce yourself, tell us where you're from. It's always fascinating to see where people are. We will be doing, as is our monthly tradition, our Zoom meetup. So starting in about 2 hours from now, we'll migrate over to a live Zoom meeting. I will go ahead and paste the link right now. And I think we're going to have a special guest, Michael Wagner, who's going to be joining us for our Zoom meetup. He's a legendary rock engineer, producer. So if you kind of Google his name, I think he sold 98 million records or something. So all the classic 80s hard rock acts all the way up to his retirement just a couple years ago. So it's a wonderful opportunity to kind of the Zoom meetup, not only to meet other attendees, but you can maybe gain a couple insights with Michael Wagner, who's a big Nuendo user. And so, he's one of the few audio engineers I've ever met that's actually been able to retire. So, he will come out just to kind of say hi for a bit and maybe we could ask him some questions. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and get started since we have kind of a 2-hour live stream, so we'll get going. All right, so a question from Mike Weiser. Question, Cubase 12 Pro, is there a way of applying a custom crossfade that's thin to an applied crossfade that's very wide without having to crossfade menu pop up? Slows the workflow down. All right, so let's say if I have one single event and I split the event, and I will just kind of hold down. Let's say I select both of these events. And then I just hit the X key. That will do a crossfade between the two particular events. Now, if we wanted a custom instead of just a linear fade, so what we could do is come over here and we could say, I want it more of a logarithmic, and I could choose this as default. So now when I do a crossfade, so let's say again, I split here, and we do our crossfade and we zoom in, we could have our different fade in and fade out shapes. So we don't have to necessarily worry about so again, selecting this and hitting the X key, we don't have to open up. So within the crossfade editor, once you set the default fade in, fade out, then you don't have to change that in any way. So let me know if that's helpful for you. And I'll just switch it back to our normal linear fades. All right, so a question. What would be the best solution for turning my drummer's talkback mic on and off while hitting record, but not the rest of the mics around his kit? His talkback is also just part of the drum audio. So what I would do, if you have the control room configured, so I would come over to the control room and we could make sure it's enabled and then turn on a talkback mic. And we could set this to be connected to our drummer's whatever microphone that's connected into. So if we have our control room here and we could enable talkback, and sometimes the talkback will stick by default. But if we go to our preferences and then under VST, go to control room, there's options here for auto disable talkback mic. So I think it's no auto disable. So now if I come up to this track and I hit record, that we will, the talkback still persists. But if I want it to, as soon as I play or hit record, for the talkback to be turned off automatically, what you could do is, again, go to the preferences, to control room, and say auto disable talkback mode, and we'll say in play and record. So now that we have this set up, my talkback is enabled. I play, I'm recording. You see that the talkback turns off. I disable my recording. It's still playing. The talkback is off. As soon as I stop the transport, talkback is turned on if it's engaged. So once again, try going directly to the preferences, and there's auto disable talkback mode, and make your settings there. So let me know if that's helpful. All right, so we see as a macro, where do I find the option in key commands to paste something like an automation dot on a hit point, but have it nudged back a few milliseconds before the hit point starts? Okay, so let's say if I'm here, let's take a look at, we'll zoom in, we'll look at, I'll just draw in some automation. Okay, so let's say we have this automation point. And let's say I want to copy this. Okay, so now I want to select this event, and I'm going to hit Alt or Option plus N or B just to kind of navigate to different hit points if we wanted to. So let's say, okay, I wanted to paste the automation here, so I'd select the automation lane. And if you want, we could go to something like the project logical editor. So we'll go to our project menu and go to project logical editor, and let's go to setup. And then what we could do is we could say, okay, if I want to paste that particular automation, and let's say I'm going to select it, I could say I want to take transform, and we'll say media type is equal to automation, and we'll say property is set to the property is selected, so this way we're not going to move all of our automation. And in the event transform actions, let's go to position, subtract, and we could set our value. Let's say you want it in milliseconds, so let's say I want it to be 100 milliseconds earlier. So now we'll zoom in, and all of this automation, I could save this as a preset. We can now just adjust that particular automation forward or backward, depending on whatever time value you want. So if you wanted to just come over here, and once you have this, you could save that and trigger the selected automation from a Mac, from a keyboard shortcut if you wanted to. So give that a try. All right, so we see from Typhoon Williams, I'm enjoying Nuendo at the moment, which is better for music production and audio engineering. So for music production, Cubase and Nuendo will be, incredibly similar. So there's really no significant differences for music production, but it's what Nuendo is going to add is going to be more, some more Dolby Atmos, some more Dolby Atmos support. It's going to add a number of game audio functions, as well as some more advanced post-production techniques. So check that out. All right. But for music production, it'd be pretty much the same. All right, so we have a question from Mr. O from Cali, Colombia. Thanks for joining us. It says, I got a weird problem with the scale assistant on Cubase 12.052. When I go to the settings, set up musical scale, all scales include the note C in the scales. Okay, so when we have a scale selected, and let's say I have my MIDI, and we come over to, and we go to major, and we say, let's go to set up custom scales. And when we see these will all be kind of start off with the key of C. So it's not that these are limited to the key of C. It's just showing the scales here are just showing the interval relationships within the scale. So if we have, let's say, okay, I wanted to do a new scale, and I wanted to be, this is my scale. So once we come over here, we could name that particular scale. So the scale is just really the interval relationship between the notes. And then that has no bearing until you actually define the key. And then you can say, okay, I wanted this particular scale. So, when the scale is represented, we could just think of it as this will always show C, just so you could see what the particular scale is, and then the key will be determined by what you set here. So that's perfectly normal and fine. All right, wonderful to see Patrick on. All right, we see Robbie just says, Cubase helped me make my songs. Check them out if you're into new music. Thanks to Steinberg for such an amazing program. Congratulations on your new release. All right, you see Mark Winslow checking in from Hawaii. So I just booked my spring break trip to Maui. So, all right, so we see Robbie Bowling just saying it's a very cold day in Dallas, Texas. I was speaking with a friend. He was staying inside today from Dallas. All right, so we have Alexander Plasko. We have Captenergy Music on. Okay, Benny, he's from Sweden, just says, I've lost all the sound in the MIDI track. All of a sudden I see that the mixer is emitting from the MIDI program, but no sound in Cubase. What could be wrong? All right, so I'm not sure if it's a MIDI track or an instrument track. So, if it's a MIDI track, it could be, check to see that you actually, you may see just MIDI activity here, since MIDI has no sound. If it's an instrument track, you would see the audio meters. So, check, if you open up the particular instrument, and if you have the ability to, just come over here and say, okay, I just want to play a particular sound, you could come over and just make sure that the particular sound that you're playing is working. So check that. And also just check to make sure that the actual MIDI routing, so like the output port, is set. And if you open this up as well, you can see the audio channels if it's an instrument track. But check just to make sure, like, MIDI channels are set correctly, that, all of that kind of typical stuff that people often kind of run into. So you could just make sure that those things are set. And if you have a screenshot you want to email me, Benny, I'd be happy to take a look at it. All right, so we have Michael Jensen, just from Jensen Studio, in a stormy day in northern Denmark. He's looking forward to the live stream, so thanks for joining us today. And we see that Jan from Cubase Index is on. All right, so we see from Dallas to LaRue, when I flatten the chain on the arranger track, it seems to add MIDI events on top of MIDI events. Could this have to do with the settings on the options menu, cascade, or split options? All right, so let's take a look. All right, so let's say I have my arranger chain here. All right, so I have MIDI tracks here for like my bass. And then I have like a Rhodes that's coming up. Just so we hear it. All right, so now let's say if we want to get to our arranger track, and let's transpose, let's flatten it out. All right, and let's look at different options. Okay, so I'm just going to create a new project, and let's flatten the chain. We'll activate the new project that's just been created. And now if we want to look at just we'll skip over to here. So I'm not seeing anything that was kind of overlapping, but just my settings I use for this Dallas. I'll just open them again. So see if you have those particular settings set, and see if that's how you have yours set, and let me know if that helps. All right. So I see from Patrick a question. Greg, I did all the leveling, gain stage, etc. But while mixing, I felt like just remove only the plugins to do it from start. Is it possible to remove all the plugins without a reset on mix window? All right, so let me just jump to a different project here. Okay, so let's say I have a number of plugins here in my mix console. And I'll just drag these over to other tracks. All right, so let's see if there is, see if there's maybe a project logical editor. I'm not sure. All right, so let's see if we delete all events equal to effect. If that does it. So that will delete effects tracks. All right, so let's see if we do it on this selected track. So let's see if I have all of my tracks selected. So let's say I come over here. I select all of these tracks. So let's say if I activate Q-Link and drag, we could just do this and get rid of all of your plugins as well. So maybe just activating Q-Link. I know that you can bypass the plugin. So say if we're here in our large mix console, let's see if there's any. I mean, you could reset the mix console channels if you wanted to do everything. So let's say if I come back to so let's say if I just want to reset those particular channels, we'll reset selected, and so you could do it on selected channels, or just, you know, maybe try the drag it out while quick link is activated if you only wanted particular plugins. All right. All right, so we see Lawrence Koch is checking in from Turks and Caicos today. Sounds like a nice place to be. We hope you're enjoying your time there. All right, it was great to see Matt Elston on, and wonderful to see Jazz Dude. We have Soren from Sweden. All right, and Soren is saying he is all in for this hangout to learn more, so that's great. All right, so we have Mark Winslow asks, how do I transfer all necessary files from recording to a HDD so I can open and process on a second computer? So the easiest way to do this is go to your file menu and go to backup project. And this will ask you to define a new folder, a new empty folder. So we'll come over here. And here you could define this folder on your external drive, wherever you want it to go to. So I'll just say, okay, we're going to come here, put it on my desktop. And once we do this, you could give it a name. You can keep the current project active. You can minimize audio files so that if you had a 3-minute recording that you used 2 seconds of, and you don't want to back up to 2 minutes and 58 seconds that you didn't use, you could choose to minimize audio files. You can remove files that aren't being used in the project. You can choose not to back up the video or the mixdown folder, and then hit OK. Then everything is going to be saved onto that new location, and that could be dragged over to another computer and opened up with all of the files and all the contents intact. All right, so we have Shalom checking in from Detroit. Thanks for joining us today. All right, and we have Arif checking in from Holland, and Uno Memento from Finland, -2 degrees Centigrade there. All right, so we see from Patrick asks, Greg, I have a group of drums. I want all the drums to be sidechained to vocal because drums dumping the vocal. I want the vocal to be front and center. What would pros do in this situation? So I don't know a lot of people that would necessarily do like a side chain for the vocal, but if you wanted to do that, I'll just kind of create this scenario. And we'll show you how you do it. You know, ideally you'd want to have, like the point where the vocals aren't clashing with the drums frequency wise. So if it's more frequency or level, I may experiment more with, checking out different, EQ frequencies to make sure that they're not clashing, or if it's just kind of a dynamics and maybe you need to get the drums kind of more in control. So let's say if I take all of my drums here, and we're going to add a group channel to the drums. And let's just add I'll just add an audio track. We'll make it mono. Yeah, let's just drop some vocals in.
I started. All
right. So I'll drop these into this track. Okay, so we'll see. This could sound totally awful. I'll just mute the other tonal instruments here. So if you wanted to
what dimension am I in?
All right, so say, don't you love when you just kind of randomly throw some audio files in and it sounds not horrible? Anyway, so let's come over here to the drums, and what I want to do is on the drum bus, I will put an insert. So let's just come over here and let's just say, okay, let's get to dynamics, and we'll just put our compressor on. And what we want to do is to have the vocal track. I'm going to enable sidechaining. We'll set up our sidechain source. And here it's going to be audio 01. And so now we'll apply kind of a heavy-handed compression on the drums. So the drums are louder. Now the vocal comes in. So you could do some stuff like that, but a lot of times, I would try to make it work tonally. If it's a frequency clash, try to isolate the frequencies in the drums so that you're not clashing and, with the vocal frequencies. But you should be able to kind of have the drums and the vocals kind of together in a mix. But if you had to do sidechaining is, route them all to a group and do a sidechain from the audio track. and that will kind of do what you want. And you could treat it very heavy-handedly or pretty subtle, just so that the vocal will kind of, pop out a little more and be able to be heard and more intelligible. All right, so we have Chond checking in from Norway. We have Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas, from ice-covered Weatherford, Texas. All right. All right, so we just see, Greg, how to deal with frequency cluttering and dampening other instruments, like frequencies fighting each other. All right, so one thing that you could do that works well, if you kind of have an idea of what is going to be, what is fighting each other, is the channel EQ has kind of a comparison mode on it. Okay, so let's say I have this source playing, and I wanted the guitar.
We first met, that was a long, long time ago.
And let's say like the piano is going to come in.
In the school parking lot. Wait, leaving now, I'm so in love.
So let's say I have the So what I could do is just go to my guitar part here. So we'll just say, okay, let's go to the guitar. And I'm just going to look at the channel frequency here. So we will just... And we could activate this little sidechain mode. So I want to activate, or it's not a sidechain, but it's kind of an EQ channel comparison. So now we could see the guitar frequencies here in the display. And I'm going to say I want this now to listen to my my Verve piano track. So now I could see what's going on with the piano, and I could now make EQ adjustments on the piano. Now if I want to adjust a guitar, and just kind of pop back and forth between the two. So we could have kind of two different sources. And just very easily switch. And you could set kind of the opacity for how their frequencies are overlaid with each other. So try the channel comparison EQ, and that's a wonderful tool for kind of fixing frequency clashes. All right. So I see Patrick just asking a question. What's the procedure to join in a Zoom meet? So I'll paste the link again, but just go to the link starting at about an hour and 25 minutes. So 2 hours after the live stream started. All right, Michael Teams wants people to whack the like button. All right, so you see Patrick, is it possible to join on Zoom Meet with mobile? So yeah, definitely you could use your iPad or your phone to join as well. All right, so we see Oral's in for Jamaica fans. So you just see tired of setting up the drawbars on the Model C. Did you find a solution? So I think, and I meant to spend some more time with this, and I apologize for that. But let's say if we jump over to Hallian. We'll open this up. All right, so, we see kind of our macro page here, but let's say if we just go into edit, and then we could see kind of our quick control assignments that I think that if we just kind of select the drawbar parameters from here, and I didn't get a chance to kind of dig in and look for them, but I think that would set kind of what the quick control assignments are, and then you could have that manage over. So instead of doing it from the macro view, maybe the edit view, and go to sound, and then you could see kind of the quick control assignments there and modify them. All right, and we have Bruce checking in from Simi Valley, California. He says, almost forgot to check in, but he did hit the like, so that's good. And hitting the like button and subscribing enables us to continue to offer these live streams as a service, so we appreciate that. All right, my chat field just jumped on me. See Michael Teams in his freezing rain and ice storm is jealous of Lawrence being in Turks and Caicos. All right, so Patrick asks, Greg, how to move forward and backward in a project window while working on a mix window? Like, I'm working on a course now. I want to check verse, move to verse in one click. Is it possible? So, yeah, it's really if you have markers set up. So let's say if I'm here with my markers, so I will add, let's say, a marker track. So let's just add markers. All right. And let's say this is like, your verse, chorus. So now, like, as we're playing, if I have the marker track selected, I can just hit like N or B to navigate between the different markers. And then if I hit Shift M, let's see if it, maybe Control M. And you could have your markers labeled, but you could now just jump to different parts of your song. So if we say, okay, this is intro, and say verse 1, chorus 1, 2. So now you can say, okay, I just want to go to my intro, and then you could just, navigate wherever you need to in your project. So try experimenting with markers and set the markers for different arrangement elements in your song. And you could have 10 independent marker tracks. All right, we see Jason Sykes checking in from a hotel in Edinburgh. Thanks for joining us. This is a great way to spend the evening. He's going to phone home later, so thanks for being online. I've been stuck in many hotel rooms, bored at night on business trips. It's usually when I would kind of work on macros and learn new stuff in Cubase. All right, so we see Michael Pierce wishing everyone a good evening. He's lurking in the background. We hope to see you on the Zoom meetup. All right, so we see from Dallas LaRue, can you give an example of polyrhythm changing every other measure from 3/4 to 4/4 and why you would ever want to use it? So it could really just depend on the song. Sometimes, songs will go back and forth between 3/4 and 4/4. Some people say, oh, it's really 7/4, but if you wanted to, do that between different takes. So let's say if we do a new project, and so, polyrhythm is sometimes when you have like triplets playing against tuplets or quintuplets playing, like 5 pulses playing against 4 pulses. But it seems like what you're describing is more in kind of the signature track. So let's say if we jump to the beginning of our project and say, okay, so we're in 4/4, and let's say I want this to be 3/4. And now I think if I grab the range tool, that if I wanted to alternate, I could just hit Command or Control plus the letter D, and then we could just navigate and duplicate the particular. So if you wanted to alternate between 4/4, looks like it just did. Oh, sorry. And let me just set this, say 4/4 and 3/4. I'll just change it this time. All right, so let's see if we duplicate this. So yeah, so now we'll see. So it's not necessarily a polyrhythm, but we could just come in here and then just alternate. So if you have a song that's kind of constantly going back and forth between 2 different meters, you could set it up like that. And again, just use the range selection tool to select the range, and then that will copy it out for you. Okay, Michael Pierce is jumping back to his edit. Good luck. All right, so we see question, how can you stack instruments in the same track in Cubase Artist 10 Pro? So I think the easiest way to do it is, so if you're doing an instrument track, is, so let's say, okay, I'm here and I want to add an instrument track. So let's do a retro log. So realize that once we add a particular instrument here, so I want to add, let's say, another instance of, let's say, Hallian Sonic SE. So I'll come here. And let's add, let's say another, do a pad shop sound. All right, so let's say now I want these sounds to be all layered together. So now if I wanted these, so these are 3 separate tracks because it's 3 different audio paths that are going out, all that could have kind of independent effects as well. So let's say we have our 3 different instrument tracks. So what you can do is just come over here, and if they're going to different instruments, we can move the selected tracks to new folder, and now I could just arm the folder. So we could just have one track, and that could be your synth stack. But realize that, these all are going to be independently controlled with independent effects. So that's why, if we stacked it, it would automatically, we don't want to lose that flexibility with that. Now, if you're just using Hallian Sonic SE, it's great for stacking, and I think a lot of people, since I kind of showed this, let's say, okay, I have a Rhodes here, and I want to use the particular Rhodes, and we'll just say, okay, as we take this, I want to now, within side of Hallian Sonic SE, I say, okay, now on MIDI channel, on, let's say, channel 2, I want this to be a pad sound that's layered. But what I could do is I could layer up to 16. So let's say I wanted to layer a different sound here, And I want this to be more of, let's say, synth. All right, let's make it more digital synth. And I put this onto MIDI channel 1. So this is all in one track. So we could stack up to 16 different tracks. We could transpose different instruments. So if I say, okay, let's come over here, put this on MIDI channel 1, that once you come over here, say, okay, now I want it you know, a completely kind of different sound, you know, so I could just come over here, say, okay, now I want my analog. And let's say I want this particular voice to be an octave higher. I could just come right over here and let's transpose it up. So now. And then you could also choose, I want like notes to come in, like these to come in on these keys. I only want it to come in on when I hit the velocity really hard, is when I want this or in this velocity range in different controllers. So, you know, check out if you want to, you know, put it into like a synth stack into a folder, and then you could close the folder and just hit one track, and you can have multiple different instruments. Or if you just have the ability to stack multiple instruments within side of like Hallian Sonic SE or Hallian Sonic or Hallian, it's a very powerful tool for that. Okay, so he's wonderful to see John Costigan from Kenosha, Wisconsin. Glad you can make it today. All right, so we have a question. When I go to the pool, I noticed that any new audio file gets a BPM value, normally 120, but after changing the BPM of the song, I still record any new file with 120. All right, so let's say if we are here and let's go to add an audio track. Okay, so right now we're at 120, and as we play, I record. Let's look at our pool, and we'll see that our tempo is set to 120. So now I'm going to turn off the master track, and let's say if I come here to 100 beats a minute and record. And let's look in our pool. So we see that now it's 100 beats a minute. So, so it looks like that automatically changed to the tempo. And let's say if I switch this to 100, and let's add another audio track. Record. So we see the first file was recorded at 120, and then when we change the tempo to 100 and deactivated the tempo track, it recorded at 100. Activated the tempo track at 100 beats a minute, and that recorded at 100. So looks like everything is kind of working as expected here, but let me know if I did something differently than you did. Okay, and we see just kind of as a continuation, what to do to get any file recorded and imported to get the tempo of the project on the pool. So, you know, if you know what the original files of the, you know, of them are. So let's say you had you were just kind of recording without a metronome and everything was recorded at 120 beats a minute. And then if you say, oh, really, the tempo is 100 beats per minute, but I just recorded it without a click track, you could go into the pool and select all of your files and say, okay, it should be 108 beats a minute, and then you could update the definition for all of the files with the correct tempo. So let me know if that's helpful. All right, wonderful to see PZ136 on. Okay, so we have a question from Michael Teams. Howdy, Greg. I'm not sure in this flattened chain thing. Can you briefly explain the uses and reasons to use, please? So if we have a particular project that we've done, that we are using the arranger chain so that we could build a non-linear arrangement of it. So if we are doing this, and let's say our song is just kind of jumping around a bit. So let's say, so instead of playing straight linearly, we could just have it. So we get to the end of this defined arrangement chain. So we could just kind of repeat different areas. So now it's going to go to refrain 2. So if we have it kind of jumping around in a non-linear arrangement and we wanted to export that, what we would need to do is to come over and then turn that linear or that non-linear arrangement that just kind of keeps jumping around to different parts and turn it into a linear arrangement where instead of all the parts jumping around, they're just kind of laid out for us from beginning to middle to end. So that's what the flattened chain allows you to do, is to take your non-linear project and turn it into a linear project. All right, so we see a question. How do I get my processing window to open and use my VST fader or gain on Cubase Artist 10? So I'm not sure if you want to adjust kind of the gain here of audio tracks, you could do it there, or if we have the track selected, if you go to the fader, you could adjust the fader. And to do processing, if you wanted to go to like the inserts tab, we could put different plugins on directly here. And we could also add send effects. So if I wanted to add a reverb across multiple tracks, what I could do now is say I'm going to take this particular track, right click, and I'll say let's add a reverb to this particular track. So we'll now say, okay, I just want to come here and I could add more reverb. But clicking on the edit channel settings, we could see all of our inserts. We could see our channel strip for doing compression, noise gates, tools for de-essing or envelope shaping, analog saturation, as well as like a limiting stage, as well as our sends. So just clicking on the E of the channel will open up all of the channel settings for you to do processing on. All right, wonderful to see Jean-Marie Horvat on. Wishing everyone a happy Tuesday. He asked, is there a Pro Tool import into Cubase? He says, made of funny. So, all right. I don't even think the Avid video software can open up a Pro Tools project, ironically. All right, wonderful to see Tim Weinheimer on. All right, and we have Mutlu Odemis checking in from Istanbul. Thanks for joining us. All right. So we see question: is there an option in Cubase to reverse the MIDI keyboard? So I'm not sure if it's like wanting to play. So let's say if we have like our Rhodes part here, and let's say I have a virtual keyboard. So if having the keyboard kind of go backwards, let's see if we could do that with maybe input transformer. So let me know if that's what you want. But let's say if we go to the track, let's see if we can do it here. All right, so we want to transform. Value 1 is pitch, and let's say as I play this, I'm going to just see which exact note that I'm hitting from. Okay, so let's say C3. Okay, so let's see if we could come over here. We'll take value 1. All right, so let's see if we can mirror that. So I could maybe play with this more, but let me know if you wanted to, like as we go like C, D, E, F, G, if you wanted to play notes going in the opposite direction, or if it's more of a MIDI editing. If it's a MIDI editing thing, we could go to the drum editor, for instance, on this part. So say, okay, if we have our drum editor and we could see, so we can see kind of our MIDI data laid out for us, but within the drum editor, we could reverse the drum sound list. So if it's just seeing it in reverse in the editor, we could do it in the drum editor. And again, just come over here and uncheck reverse drum sound from list. Or let me know if you wanted to input like transform, so as you go upward in pitch, that it actually plays down in pitch. If you let me know that would be helpful. All right, wonderful to see Kai Neunert from Munich. Thanks for joining us, and Brian Sawyer from Beulahville, North Carolina. All right, we have Steve Leeds joining us as well. All right, so John Costigan asks, I messed up my Groove Agent transfer from instrument track to MIDI tracks. I accidentally dragged a couple of tracks instead of copy and paste MIDI signal, no audio. So make sure that, if you've done that, so let's say, I'll just get to a different project. So I'll just revert this quickly because I think I've destroyed it pretty good. All right. So one of the things that I did, I think I made a macro that might help you out with this. So let's say I have my drum part here, and let's drag the pattern over. Okay. So let's say I'm going to add I'm going to come over here. Let's add an instrument rack. All right, and I'm going to just choose this to Groove Agent SE. So we'll create, and that's going to create it directly below. So let's see if I still have this macro. All right, so let's see if it's instrument to MIDI. All right, so let me just try it here. So we say instrument to MIDI. All right. So what that did is it just automatically copied all of the data down. So what I did for the macro, and maybe you could do this. Let's go to the key command. We'll say instrument to MIDI. So we just edit. So I'm on the instrument track. We say edit, select all on tracks, and then we do edit, copy, add track, MIDI, and then edit, paste at origin. And then you could automatically do that. So if you run that macro, you could at this point just route this out to an instance of Groove Agent. So once again, if you want that macro, this is something I did. So you don't have to necessarily load it up first, but this will automatically do that for you. I think I created the macro just after last time you asked about this to kind of simplify the process. So, and you could also, if you have an instrument loaded up, you could, navigate down and then paste on the particular track as well. So maybe try a macro and then all the parts can be moved over for you without you having to worry about it. So let me know if that's helpful, John. All right, so we have a question from Benny. He asks, can't find a mute and solo button in large mixer for all tracks separately. In each track they exist, but not as in the project to mute all tracks at the same time, for example. Okay, so let's say if I'm here, if you go to the very top, so we could just come right over here, and then we could just solo and mute. So I think that will just come over here. So we could turn off and on kind of the solo and mute states. But let me just see if let's just take a look at. And also, Patrick, if you wanted to navigate markers within the project window, you could navigate it there and add the markers. So let's say this function. So that deactivates all the solo states. So look just, at the top here, and it could be to make sure that you have, if you go to the settings, that you have, let's see what they call it. I think it's the state buttons. So if that's not turned on, try going to the settings cogwheel over to the right, and then just go to the state buttons, and then you should see it just kind of pop up there. So let me know if that helps. All right. Okay, so we see from Patrick, Greg, is there any hidden features on the mix window that we don't know? Can you share with us? So a lot of people, I guess nothing is hidden per se. Everything is visible, but always kind of check to make sure that you have all these different functions. Like, if you wanted to see the markers, you could do that. I think a lot of people will miss, okay, I wanted to take, like my drums. Let's say these are my drum tracks. I want to take, like on the folders, if you come over here and hold down the shift key, I could only see what's in that particular folder. And if we come over to, we can say, let's show all tracks. So I think, there's a lot of great visibility things that you could do. So if you wanted to hide all of a particular channel, so I don't want to see that if it's in a folder, we could treat it like so, or again, shift, and we could see everything that's laid out for you. Trying to think of other little things that, if you go into the mixer, you could, as you come over here, notice that as we do this, that we could actually just see the actual pitch of the EQ frequencies as we adjust it. So you could EQ to the key of the song. It's always helpful. Being able to navigate your control room is also, very powerful. But, there's a lot of things if you go into, like what racks. So a lot of people may not come over here, make sure that you could have all of your racks exposed if you want to. Another thing, let's see where it is, being able to select and say, okay, I like these particular channels, and I want to come to this little drop down menu and be able to save those selected channels. But play around with these. I mean, there's nothing that's hidden per se. I mean, everything is there. A lot of people miss the history. So if you come over here, you accidentally moved this, fader, you adjusted the pan, move this fader, and you don't like what you did, you could just simply go to your edit history and be able to navigate right back to where you were. But there's no necessarily secret hidden gems. They're all there. It's just when you discover them. So, but I understand what may be a secret if you don't know is a secret once you see it. All right. All right. Wonderful to see Jeff Zabelski on from Chico, California. All right. We'll be starting our Zoom in about 51 minutes. I'll paste the link again. And again, we should have Michael Wagner joining us. All right, so we have a question from Kai. I have the problem that the MIDI instrument always plays something that is not in the MIDI written when the red record button is automatically on when you click on the track. Okay. All right. So it could be, so let's say if, maybe it's playing something that's underneath. So let's say I have this Rhodes part and I record. All right. So let's say and depending on your MIDI record mode, so let's say if we wanted to do new parts, I could, let's say if I hit record again, I'll just take off my pre-count. So one, it could be if you have the chord track active, make sure that the chord track isn't triggering the particular notes, and we see that now if we look at this, I recorded kind of two parts that you may have parts that are kind of stacked on top of each other. So make sure that you know, it's not something where maybe there's an underlying event that you don't see, but check that out. And also make sure that if you have it set for record, that you may have the chord track automatically sending MIDI data to it as well. All right, so Jay Hatchie checking in from Ireland. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see, and his question is, can you show us if or how to adjust MIDI latency? Is it a setting to offset like in Ableton? So, you know, generally there's, you know, automatically compensated for, but realize that, you know, different MIDI devices, MIDI drivers may automatically not, you know, there are timing fluctuations with different MIDI drivers. But if we go to, let's say, the audio system, you could adjust, you know, you could do record shift. So let's say, so you make sure that you could maybe come over here, and I don't think that this is just for audio, but maybe if you come over here and adjust the chord shift, but basically, you know, Cubase sends the MIDI out at the right time, how the other interfaces and devices respond to that. Sometimes it's out of Cubase's control when Cubase is sending it out at the right time. So it's kind of the age-old dilemma of dealing with external MIDI stuff that, yeah, you know, you know, I remember talking with Trevor Morris, and he's like, yeah, what's 10 to 12 milliseconds amongst friends, you know, with external MIDI. So, and when we have, you know, the virtual instruments, which are sample accurate, makes for a big difference. All right, my chat field just jumped. All right, so I think I'm close. All right, so we see from Andrew Jobson, says the drum editor has a vertical line that follows the cursor, but is it possible to have the drum editor highlight the row that the cursor is hovering over? All right, so let's say, I'll just, all right, so let's say I'm looking at the drum editor. All right, so let's say we have, so I think that there is a function, a preference, if we go under editing to auto select events under cursor. So now as we're this vertical line, you can see that as the events play, that it's highlighted. So as soon as the cursor is over the particular event, that it highlights. So that could be on a project window, the MIDI editor, or the drum editor. So let me know if that's helpful for what you want it. So again, under editing, auto select events under cursor. All right, so we have the Two-Stir checking in, and we have Daltro Vieira official sending regards from Brazil. Thanks for joining us, being a part of the live stream. All right, we have Heru Nagroho joining us from Indonesia. Thanks for being on today. And Leon Dresser says, I enjoy your content, great ideas in production. Try to keep it simple because there's so many balls I have to juggle doing it, but thank you for the kind words. All right, so we see from Bruce, how long is the Zoom planned for? I have something I have to do at 12, but might be back by 1 if it's still going to be happening then. So we usually try to do 2 hours, but usually ends up being 3. So you'll probably be back in time, Bruce. So jump in whenever you get back. All right, so we have a question. Hey, Greg, can you show the New York compression as a send on drum group bus? I'm having trouble with the signal flow. Okay. Okay, so we'll take a look at how to do parallel compression. All right, so let's say first off, so we have our drums, and let's say I want our drums to kind of have both punch but still have kind of the natural dynamics of the drums. So I'm going to create 2 group tracks. So we'll create 2 groups, okay? Now we could do this a couple of different ways. So one is, okay, I want to go to I'm going to select all my tracks, let's say all my drum tracks. Let's go to sends, and I'm going to activate Q-Link, quick link, and you can do that by holding down Alt or Option plus Shift. And now I'm going to send them all to group 1, turn it on, and send them all to group 2. And turn it on. So now my drums are being fed to 2 different groups. So what I want to do is on one of the groups is to apply compression. So I'll just come here. So now we have this group. So I'll just solo. So this group is unaffected. So we'll just say, so that's our unaffected group. And this is our group, which is kind of squashed. And the goal is to just kind of take these 2 groups and be able to blend the 2 sources together. So we'll just have it kind of kick in. And now as I blend in the heavily compressed, so this group, unaffected, still has kind of all the original dynamics, and this kind of gives you kind of that punch. So again, we'll take this, unaffected, blend in the parallel. So once again, so just create 2 groups. One's going to be unprocessed, one will be processed. And we could take all the tracks, we could use direct routing or use, sends to get the audio to the groups. All right. All right, so we have a question. Good day, Greg. Can we disable the bass note generally in the chord pad editor? Then there's so much free to decide what bass note we'd like to choose. All right, so let's say, all right, so let's look at, we'll jump back to this project. All right. Thanks for all the wonderful questions. Let's see how we're doing on time. All right, doing great. Okay, so let's say I have my Rhodes, and let's go to our chord pads. All right, so let's go and activate. Okay, so let's see if we can, I think we could. Okay, so we can say pads, let's see if we can, so we had chord modifiers, let me just. Right. All right, so let me just. All right, let me see if we could set. I mean, you can change the bass note here within the particular. All right, so let's say we'll take our C chord here. I'm pretty sure there's a way to do it, but I might have a brain cramp on it. Because I know, like on a particular MIDI track, that if we go to the chords here, that we could adjust the chord voicings. So let's say if we say follow the chord track, that we could adjust the voicings. Or if we go here, let's say, see if this has an effect. Let's see if we choose not to add the root note. And let's say if we have the chord track turned on, so we have this. Let's see if this has any impact on it. No, it doesn't seem to. Okay, so if we go, sorry, for my burn cam. So click on the edit and go to chord voicing style and go to custom. And then you could say take root note out. So now when we play, so try that. So come over here, a chord voicing style to custom, and you could set the lowest root note here. So let's say we want this to be C2. So now, so experiment with that. And we could just say, okay, I want it to be just 3 note chords. So play around in there, and I think you can get it. Okay, so we see question, please select chord pads editor, select any pad, enter C plus minor, then add sharp 5th, flat 13th, while selection's completely off. Okay. See, all right, so let's say, all right, so all right, so it says select any pad, enter C plus minor. So let's come over here. Okay. So I guess that would turn it into a C diminished chord, which would make sense if you had the flat 5th and the flat, so C diminished chord, because if you have a flat 5th, you're going to have a flat 3rd and a flat 5th. So that would be a diminished chord. So let me know if that's not what you're seeing, but that would be a diminished chord. It was, I learned in music theory. All right. So we see question, will we get in our Cubase update soon? So I'm sure that the team is always working on new stuff. So you could rest assured that the development team doesn't get much of a rest. That, as soon as one Cubase version is out, the date's released, they're already working from that day on for, adding new features and enhancements and coming out with new stuff. So I can't really say I'm under non-disclosure agreements, or I can't really say when something will be out, but the team isn't resting. All right, so we see question, how can I copy an event and make this event independent in one step? So if you just copy the event, so let's say Control D, this is independent. So if we wanted to come over here and select all the notes and move it down, we can see that this one is moving. If we made a shared copy originally by holding down like Shift and dragging, so now if I make a change in this event, we'll see that the other event will just change together with it. So if I wanted this to be independent, I would select it. And let's say if I did that twice, and I wanted the one in the middle to be independent, we would go to Edit, to Functions, and convert to Real Copy. So now when I do an edit on this event here, we'll see it edit in this event, but not in the middle one. So I can change the pitch. So we can see that those changes are being applied to the first and third events and not the second event, because again, I selected it, went to Edit, to Functions, convert to Real Copy. So select it, and then you could do that, and then it's going to be an autonomous, independent event. All right, so we see, okay, so wonderful to see Nick on the live stream. All right, so Harry Olive asks, when hovering over a track insert effect slot, is there any shortcut to remove the selected plugin? All right, so let's say if I'm here, and it's not necessarily a hover type of thing because you would need to have kind of in software design something selected. So if you're hovering, if you just click and drag it away, you could just remove the keyboard shortcuts like that. So just, instead of hovering, just click the mouse and just kind of throw it away over there, and then you can get rid of your inserts just like that. So not much more effort than hovering. So let me know if that's helpful. All right, wonderful to see Graham Witcher on. And he's just shocked that it's already the end of January. He's like, where did January go? All right. All right, and we have David M. checking in from Liverpool. Jeff Sabelski, he says he only comes for the delicious dreamsicle ice cream. And I'm sprinkles on top. I'm spreading knowledge. All right, you see Ralph Nelson Tucker just says it's just a bit chilly in the UK. All right, so Rick Pentelo says, hi, thanks for the tips. I'm trying to take it all in. It'll all be available to watch, and the different topics covered will be indexed with timestamps. But welcome to the live stream. Glad you could make it. All right, so we see, hi, can you show me how I can make one keyboard shortcut to fade in and fade out clips? All right, so let's say we have this. So if we have like the range selection, so let's say I wanted to, and if I'm at the end of an event and I hit the letter A, that will adjust the range. If I'm at the beginning of the event, that will adjust the fade range. So that will just kind of do our clip gains. And if I wanted to select the middle of the event and hit A, I could do fade in and fade out. So anything that you want to, if you have just the range tool selected, and let's say if you have just kind of in combo mode, so I want fade ins and fade outs to there, or if it's touching the beginning or touching the end, just the letter A. Sorry, I hit the wrong key there. And that will just do your fades directly on the event. So let me know if that's helpful. So try using the range tool with the letter A. And let's see if we could even, if I just have the event selected. Yeah, so just grab, just the arrange tool, A. And that's a pretty fast way of doing it. All right, great to see Roger Cabo, or Cabo. All right, and we have Zanny Cinderella from Sri Lanka. Thanks for joining us. You see Michael Pierce says that when he can't get an AAF file to load in from Pro Tools into Avid Media Composer, he converts it into Cubase and then re-exports it. So standards are good. All right. All right, so you see Mr. O just says, now he understands how Cubase deals with the scale programming, which is really different to other VSTs. So, just for defining the scales, so you can, it's just much easier to figure out what the relations of the intervals are that way. All right, so we see from Mutlu, says, hello again, just reversing notes while playing the MIDI keyboard is not from C2 to G8, but from G8 to C2 when playing from left to right. Is it possible? So I'll play around with it and see if there's a way in the editor. So let's, so if we wanted to go down, so I'll try one more time with the input transformer. And see if there's any factory presets. I know it did something that was similar on a... All right, so let's say for... So still kind of as I go up the keyboard. But if you want to email me, I'll see if I can play around with it. But if it could be done, it would be done in the logical or in the input transformer. But you could email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, I'm going to paste the Zoom meetup link again. But yeah, Mutlu, please email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. My chat field just jumped. All right, I think I'm getting back to close to where I was. All right, so we see from Henry, why doesn't you just see STRG plus Z work for any non-timeline settings in Cubase? Appreciate. So I'm not sure if that's, I think it's like maybe a German keyboard term. So I know that like control, like if we do edits here, that we could use Control Command Z. And then if we want to use in the mix console, if I move faders accidentally, we could use Alt or Option plus Z. So there's kind of two different undo histories. One is dedicated to the mixer, and one is dedicated for the actual edits on the timeline. So, but if you could specify what STRG plus Z is, that would be great. All right, so we see from Diversium, when I copy an audio file, and I do a DOP, direct offline process, on one of them with example, the randomizer. Is there a possibility to apply the DOP to all instances of the same audio file? So let's say if and it could depend on a particular preference. So when you go to preferences, let's go to editing to audio, and we could say on processing shared clips, we could have it automatically create a new version, or we could have it open the options dialog box. Okay, so I'll just come over here. Let's drag a sound effect in, or just do a quick sound. Okay, so let's say if I have this copied multiple times. All right, so this is the same audio file. So if I wanted to do a direct offline process, so we'll just come over here and we'll hit F7. And I want to do, let's say I'm going to select one, and then we do an offline process. So let's say I want to do a fade out. So you may get this window that says the project contains events that use the same audio material. Do you want as the event in this editor, click new version of processing should work across or only to the edited version. So here we could just say, and a lot of people just click please don't ask again. So now when I come over here, my one edit has been applied to all of them. But if I wanted to treat them independently, now when I go to do a process, let's say fade in, we could say new version, and that's going to create a new audio file for each of the versions. So check your preference when you go to preferences, editing to audio, and then you may just have it automatically process the existing clip or create a new version. So that would, I think, take care of that for you. See, the Heartbreak Time Machine just says that mixer undo list is magic. Yeah, it's a good one. All right, so we have Sam Brown checking in from Indiana. Thanks for joining us. So Sam asks, you get a lot of questions. Are there questions you wish people would ask more often or ever for that matter? I don't think about it. I just, whatever questions people have, I'm happy to answer. So I don't, some people are, sometimes you answer the same question a lot. And that's perfectly fine because not everyone watches every single live stream. So I have no skin in the game per se. So whatever questions people have, I don't mind. I just want to help people learn. So I don't really have I wish someone would ask this question. And if I felt that way, I would probably make up a question and show it to people. All right. I know we have some questions that were mailed in. So let me get to those. I probably should have got to them a little earlier. Let me just jump back so we could do that. All right, so the first question we had was how to snap, how to snap tempo events to the grid. All right, so let's say we have tempo events here. Okay, and let's say these are slightly off the grid. So if I hit the letter J, and we'll make sure that the snap is turned on, and I'm just going to grab this selection tool. Now I can just automatically take these tempo events that are slightly off the grid, and now we could just snap them to the beat, bar, or quantize value. Okay, so we had a question. How do I solo a track and make sure all the effects stay active? All right, so in this, I have just a vocal track that's routed out to a reverb. So I will come over here. So we hear the reverb. So when I solo this, the reverb, since that's a part of the signal path, will automatically get soloed as well. So you see that as I unsolo the source track, the reverb will get. So as long as the the signal path is going forward, so that this vocal track is going into the reverb, that now when I solo, that we will hear that reverb is automatically soloed and unsoloed because it's part of the signal path of that. All right, so we had a question. Been having an issue with audio files. When I scissor cut the audio, there is a slight pitch bend at the start of the audio where the cut occurred. Is there a way to fix that? All right, so I'll just turn my volume down. This will be maybe a bit annoying to listen to, but let's say I have a test tone here. So I just did a straight 440 hertz oscillator. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the audio. And we'll see, I'll just put this into a quick loop. See if we hear any pitch change. So to me, it doesn't seem that cutting the audio is creating a pitch change. So, but if you have a file that you want to share with me, you could email it to me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, so we had a question. On an audio track, I used to be able to create a blank section of audio with a pencil next to a sample, then bounce them together, and that functionality doesn't seem to work. Range tool, glue parts. Okay, so let's say we had an audio file that was maybe like this, and I think what they wanted to do was to make kind of like an equal, they wanted to take an audio file of this, turn it into one audio event, and what they would do is just kind of come over here and select and do a bounce selection. So if I do this, let's say I take this blank part and I go to audio and we choose bounce selection, that now will replace the events. That since there's no data there, it's not going to make this into one nice, happy, contiguous part. But if we used a range tool, so let's say I grab my range tool and click here and then click at the end. So now I'm going to select the range of the events. So I'm not selecting the events, but I'm selecting the range. And now we do a bounce selection and replace the events. Now it's going to be one happy, contiguous part. So maybe just use the range tool for that instead. You could also do a render in place. And if you wanted to, select this event with the range and then hold down shift and again, just kind of click here at the end. That way you could just select the entire range and then do a bounce selection. All right, so we had a question. How do you open ADM files in Cubase? So that's a Dolby Atmos mixdown file. So we could export them from Cubase, but Cubase doesn't import them. Nuendo will import ADM files. That's one of the distinctions between Cubase and Nuendo. All right, so we had a question. Is there a way to edit velocity and CCs for MIDI in a folder? So yeah, so let's say we have a folder and we see that we'll have within this particular folder, and I'll just make these 3 tracks larger. Okay, so when we select a folder, realize that, we can't do MIDI editing on a folder because the folder doesn't have MIDI. So there may be MIDI tracks within the folder. So what you could do is, and if you wanted to do this with a keyboard shortcut, you could go to the Project Logical Editor and you could set up, I think there's a So now what you could do is come over here and just do like we'll choose select, and then we're going to say our media type is equal to MIDI, and then now we can say property is set to the parent object is selected. And now at this point, we could select all on track. So now I could just hit this button and it will select all of the MIDI directly within the folder track. So, and then you could do whatever velocity and MIDI CC editing that you want. But once again, the folder track doesn't contain MIDI, but we could select the MIDI tracks and their events using the Project Logical Editor. All right, so we have a question. I'm not sure if this is a feature or hidden in Cubase. Is there an option to select record, which also select monitor on track? But I work with a lot of MIDI, and sometimes when I'm composing, it would be nice just to have the selected track monitor so I can play with ideas before recording. So I guess what they want to do is, we could have it where we could enable by selecting the track, we could enable monitor on record, but it doesn't. There isn't a preference to automatically on the selected track to just turn on enable or to turn on monitor enable. We can make a Project Logical Editor preset for that, but it doesn't automatically, just when you select a track, we could have it automatically armed for record, and we could have the monitoring carried over for that, depending on your preference, like if you have tape machine style selected, but it will automatically, but it's not going to, I don't know of a way to automatically do that. You'd have to maybe initiate it through a Project Logical Editor. All right, so we have a question. Is there a way to, this is with Vary Audio, to vary the main pattern selection automatically in the style editor page? There's auto complexity fill, etc. And to work across multiple pattern groups, I can use the auto pattern groove fill function in FX expansion, but it would be tedious to say the least. Autofill complexity and the other automation functions don't work on all agents either. So if you're doing this with like Groove Agent, what you realize that the Groove Agent will only really carry over. It will only have the particular like style and complexity for acoustic agent kits. So when we want to come here and let's say, okay, I go to this, and so when we open up Groove Agent and we're playing our pattern and we go to, edit the pattern, here's where we could have kind of our different levels of complexity. So we can say, every bar, and what this will do is kind of go up 2 levels of complexity. So, and that's going to be within, and we have within acoustic agent, we could have 8 variations per pad. So it doesn't, and these are all kind of, or I guess you have 16 different pattern variations. So, so if you're doing it kind of within Groove Agent, you can do it within the acoustic agent kits. And that will do kind of your different auto complexity. So we could just say, fill it off at, every bar. And that will go 1 or 2 levels up. And you could also, if you just wanted to control this, you could right click and learn a MIDI CC and move it as well. But if you're doing it inside of a Beat Agent kit, the Beat Agent kit doesn't have that particular functionality. All right, question. About 2 years ago, a Combi Steinberg Production Starter Pack headphone, microphone, sound card, UR22C all worked fine, but I'm getting lately such an annoying ground noise when switching 48-volt phantom power on. I thought it could come with lack of a sound card power supply. And I did buy one last week, but still the ground noise is where I turn on to 48 volts to on with the UR22 sound card. I read in a forum both computer and sound card should be plugged into the same power socket, but nothing changes. Same problem with USB power source. So what I would do on this, generally I haven't had any power ground issues. See what happens if you're running it on a laptop. You don't say if you're running on a laptop, but if you're running on a laptop and you pull the power and the power goes away, then you would probably need to lift the ground on the laptop power supply or try plugging it into a different power strip. It could be, make sure that if you have another microphone, make sure that the microphone isn't damaged. And try another microphone or try another source and see if it's maybe the microphone or if there's a particular problem. But if it's like a power grounding issue, if you're running everything on USB power and simply, if it's a laptop, try running it on a battery. And if it goes away, then you know that the laptop's power source is going to be problematic. All right, we had a question. Is it possible to set the visibility track agents to show dynamically a cursor playhead position? And I think if we had a number of tracks playing in a project where, and I've gotten this question before where and we see that we have visibility agents for, when we go to our visibility agents, that we could say, show tracks at the cursor position. Or you do it, show tracks with the selected events. And it's not going to do it dynamically because while it seems like it would be cool, imagine that, all like your drums are out for 8 measures and then you have your vocal here, then your vocal jumps over here, a hi-hat goes away, then you don't want tracks necessarily to jump around all over the mix console. So I think while it seems like it's an interesting thing, that the practicality of it would soon be diminished once all of your tracks are dynamically moving in the mix console. All right, let's see, we could do a couple more questions before we start to Zoom. All right, we had a question. Can you please explain how to read a Cubase crash dump in Windows? So there is a little utility that I saw that people use for this, and it's a WinD, capital D, BG preview app. And you could get that at the Microsoft store. So Win, capital D, BG, like David, Big, Greg, preview app. So look for that, and that could interpret crash dumps from many different programs. All right, question. I'm wondering if the following is possible to do through a single macro command or from the logical editor. What I want to do is to reset the state of a few plugins metering system with a key command, be through a macro or logical editor script or Cubase Pro 12. For example, I want to reset the state of tonal balance, insight metering from Isotope, and others at the same time with a single command. Is this possible? So you could check to see if that's an automatable parameter. And if it's an automatable parameter, you could go to the MIDI remote and just say, okay, I want to go to this particular button on my MIDI remote. And if you open up a particular plugin, so say, okay, I want to do maybe my analyzer plugin. I will come over and say, okay, I want to reset. So we could just say, okay, I want to, let's say, pause the measurement. So see if you could right click and pick up for MIDI remote mapping for that particular function. And then you could apply the mapping to the particular MIDI remote script to turn it on and off. All right, so let's go ahead and I'm going to start the Zoom. I'm going to paste the Zoom credentials here. I'm probably just a minute or two late. Thank you all for the wonderful questions, and we're going to migrate over to Zoom. And I'll just share my screen while I log into my Zoom meetup here. Okay, so we're going to start the meeting. And again, this is just the informal way, just kind of hanging out. And I think we'll have Michael Wagner joining us. All right, and we'll kind of transition over. Thank you for all the wonderful questions. All right, we see Benny, we have Lawrence. All right. All right. All right. Lots of people jumping in. All right, so we have Soren. All right, so you see Michael Wagner's on. All right, I'm going to start my video here. I'm going to turn my light on so I don't look like I'm red. Hang on. All right, so we have Patrick joining. All right, we'll get some people. Thanks for joining us, Michael. All right, we'll give another couple minutes for people. All right, so we have Michael Pierce joining us. Great to see everyone. All right, I'm going to go shut down the live stream here in about 60 seconds. All right, just a couple people in the waiting room. See Gareth on. All right, so I'm going to end the live stream. So.